All right, let's get started. So, hello everyone. Thanks so much for coming to this event, Breaking into Product. I'm very excited to have you all here and very excited to have our panelists here as well. And before we get into it, I'd like to just acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting. I'm currently zooming in from the land of the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and future, who might be here today as well. So for today's event, we have three very special guests from three fantastic companies, which we're really excited to have speak to everyone. So I might just get Callista to introduce them or get them to introduce themselves. Let me just get up.
Right, cool.
Right,
so we have Jess
Callista.
from Canva today and Amir from Airwallex and Arlen from Deloitte. And would you guys please introduce yourselves? Tell us a bit of your background, your role, and what you studied in uni. Jess, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll go first. First of all, it's really cool to see you using a Canva presentation. Hi everyone, my name is Jess and I'm the product design lead for Canva Video. So I look after our video product, which is still fairly quite new. It's only about 2 years old, but it will be released to the public in October, which is really exciting. Prior to Canva, I was in the wonderful world of agency. So I was a product design consultant. So I understand managing clients, which can always be quite tricky. And on the side, I also do some teaching and lecturing at JMC. So I also understand how scary and daunting it can be going into the product world as a student. So hopefully I can help debunk some of those questions today.
Nice. And what did you study in university?
Oh yeah, sorry. So I did a Bachelor of Design in Visual Communications at the University of Technology, Sydney.
Nice. Right. On to Amir.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. Yeah, so my name is Amir. I'm a product manager at Airwallex. I've been here for just over a year now. I studied electrical engineering at UNSW, and before Airwallex, I started a couple startups. One you might have heard of already, TimeWeave, a calendar app for university students, and also a tutoring business as well. So yeah, I mean, that's a little bit about my work background, but if there's anything else, happy to answer.
Cool. On to you, Arlen.
Cool, thank you. Hey everyone, so I'm Arlen. I'm a senior consultant working in the UX space at Deloitte Digital. So I've been working in UX for around a bit over 7 years. I started as a grad at Deloitte. I actually took a 2-year break between to become an experienced design lead at Telstra, but didn't make my way back because I sort of missed consulting just a bit too much. I actually studied a Bachelor of Business Information Systems at RMIT, so yeah, not quite related to design, but I sort of managed to make my way into there just because I enjoyed it so much.
Nice. And just jumping into the first question, and we can go in the same order. What made you decide to work as a product designer or product manager or UX designer?
Yeah, so I feel like my journey into product design was a bit of a rocky one. I did a Bachelor of Design, which essentially required us to do internships. And when I was doing internships, I really had no idea of what I wanted to do. So the first thing that my head went to was advertising, right? Like you think design, you think advertising, cool. And then I did an internship and it realized that I absolutely did not want to do that. So I actually cut my internship short and then decided, hey, let's like figure out branding. Maybe branding's cool. And then while I was doing my internship at a branding studio, there was a engineer that, you know, I just became friendly with and started talking to and wanted to understand more about his job. And I guess that's where I really opened my eyes to this collaboration between design and engineering. And I really wanted to find a space that catered for that. And shortly after that, I was, you know, dabbling into this idea of, you know, what job could offer that. And product design really seemed to be the job that could offer that. And obviously it wasn't a straight jump into product design. I needed to really upskill myself and learn about the product design world. So I was really looking at any kind of job. I was still a student. Any job that would offer an opportunity that I could upskill in product design. And I got a job at a digital design agency as a visual designer. And that didn't mean I was a product designer yet, but what it really did was it gave me exposure to that space. And that exposure was really invaluable for me to learn how the product world operated and really to get my mindset in that product mindset. So that's how I kind of started off in the product design world, and yeah, it just organically grew into my role that I'm in now.
Oh, cool. Amir, would you like to go next?
Sure. It's actually a pretty interesting story. So when I was running TimeWeave as a startup founder, I was doing a lot of kind of a bit of everything. As a startup founder, you do have to do a little bit of everything. And one of my friends came up to me and he was like, you know, what do you do at TimeWeave? I mean, you have your technical co-founder who does most of the coding. So what do you do? And I was explaining to him, you know, I talk to our customers, I do a little bit of the design, I also do a little bit of the coding. I kind of figure out what to do next. And he was like, oh, that sounds a lot like a product manager. And I was like, I don't know what a product manager is. So I did some Googling of what a product manager is. And I looked at the role and I was like, wow, this is everything I do for my startup. So that's kind of, it kind of aligned perfectly with what I was doing already. And I was pretty passionate about what I did at TimeWeave, just having a love for products or having really significant impact on the kind of product direction and talking to customers and really figuring out what like solving problems, customer problems, and building out screens. So that's kind of what got me into product management.
Nice, thank you. Arlen, on to you.
Cool. Yeah, I think like a lot of uni students, when I was back in uni, I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do once I finished. And I remember going for my IBL year and sort of applying for different companies and still like not really sure where I wanted to sort of focus myself. And I managed to get a role as a digital marketer in a pharma company. And that was sort of my real sort of first foray into, I guess, what the digital world was. So, you know, doing like a lot of design, a bit of dev work, a bit of BA work and things like that as well. And it was actually a similar session to this where we had a bunch of different companies sort of present back to us about, you know, what they do, sort of the different things that they sort of, you know, involved in day to day. And that's where I found out about Deloitte Digital. And I was like, oh, this is actually exactly what I want to do. You know, I love the design sort of aspect and I love working in the digital space and sort of all of that. And I wanted to sort of find out more about what they do. So I managed to get a grad role in at Deloitte. Initially came in as a BA, so just doing a lot of, you know, sort of like requirements gathering, QA, things like that. And that's when I really first found out about UX. So I think back then we were called functional interaction designers. So we were sort of doing a mixture of the designing, but also, you know, writing functional specs, the big documents that actually detail things like the business rules, you know, validation rules, error messages, and things like that for the websites and apps that we're designing for. And so I sort of just reached out and said, hey, I'm actually really keen to get involved into this. So I managed to get onto a project, dip my toes into UX. And that was my first year at Deloitte as well. And sort of since then, I've just been on a trajectory, learning more and more and sort of getting more involved. I think it's just the aspect of being able to sort of mix that, the design work, which I actually really enjoy doing, but also, you know, the customer aspect. So speaking to people, doing researching and things like that as well, and sort of bring not only the customer side of things, but the business side of things, merging them together to sort of create a solution, which I actually find quite challenging, but really fun.
Nice. It's nice to see how everyone has a different and completely different background. Going on to the next question, how did you land your current role at the company you're working at? And we can go in the same order, starting from Jess.
I find this quite an awkward question because I interviewed. No, so when I applied for Canva, I really always had my eyes on Canva because for me, a workplace that was really supportive of diversity, that was, had that company culture that I really wanted to work in, where it did still have that startup vibe, but it was like quite a profitable company, not country, it could be a country. So I always had my eyes on Canva. So I felt like it was the right time for me to make the move when, I started wanting to delve deeper into products. So in consulting world was great because what it did was it gave me exposure to so many different clients, so many different workplaces. But for me, something that was lacking was I really wanted to get really deep into a single product. And that was why I decided to transition into Canva. So when I first joined Canva, I was immediately put into the video team, but what really helped me get to the position that I'm at now was I really had really good mentors. We call them coaches. So my coaches were really, really good in helping me upskill and refining my craft, because for me, having a strong UI and UX craft was really, really important. So setting those growth goals were incredibly important for me, as well as, just being a bit strong-willed. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be, I call it stubborn. Whereas, my co-workers say, if there's something that you want and you work hard to get it, there's no reason why you can't, just as long as you don't hurt any people along the way. That was like loosely how I ended up at Canva. I don't really know if I've answered the question because in a nutshell, I just interviewed.
No, that's perfect. And I love Canva. But yeah, Amir, how about you?
Yeah, I actually had the same dilemma as Jess. So it's not just you. Like, does the question, how did you land your current role at your company? Does that mean like, why did I apply to Airwallex, or why did I get in?
A bit of both, maybe a bit more. Why did you apply to Airwallex in particular?
Sure. So I knew I wanted to work at a Australian tech startup that was also kind of, established, but still quite startup-y. Basically a tech unicorn in Australia, and there aren't that many in Australia. So you're quite limited to a few options. But yeah, all of them were definitely very viable. Why a tech unicorn? Because tech, I think, is very progressive in terms of its culture and the way that people work. So it's really great. And as a startup founder, like, I know how fun it is to work at a startup, and you have at a smaller company, you definitely have a lot more control in a lot more responsibility, but at the same time, a lot more control and impact in the products that you kind of build. And then I decided to work at Airwallex because it was actually one of the only fintechs unicorns in Australia, if not the only one. I guess the other one could be Afterpay, which just got acquired. But yeah, like I haven't been exposed to fintech before Airwallex. I was actually just in kind of consumer products. So Canva was definitely one of the companies that I had my eyes on as well. But I did want to kind of diversify in the sense that I really wanted to know what working at a fintech was like. And like, fintech is probably the most invested sector in the technology sector. So it's definitely in a boom right now. And you can see that with, Stripe being valued at, I think, over 100 billion. And so many of these kind of fintech companies coming out, and a lot of investment going into them. So just, I guess, jumped on the bandwagon. But it's really exciting because you get to build some really powerful things that people actually need to do on a day-to-day, people and businesses need to do on a day-to-day yeah, just working day-to-day. So it's pretty exciting to work on fintech products and getting that experience in there, whilst also hitting the criteria of, you know, being a tech unicorn and also a startup in Australia. So that's why Airwallex.
Thanks. That was really good. Arlen, what was your reason of choosing Deloitte?
Definitely. I think, yeah, so like a lot of people I'm sure on the call will either experience soon or have experienced. My sort of last year at uni, so the start of the year, I was frantically trying to apply to everything and anything that I could. But I think, yeah, as I mentioned before, since having one of these sessions where I had someone from Deloitte Digital come present, and I think back then I used to see like Big Four consulting as, you know, just a bunch of people wearing suits and ties and, you know, sort of associated with like accountants and stuff. But in comes this dude with like a t-shirt and a blazer and sneakers. I'm like, oh, hey, that's actually quite different. I could, you know, wear that every day. Obviously not the main reason. But I sort of had my eyes set on, you know, working at Deloitte Digital specifically, if possible. So I applied for the grad role, got accepted. And I think one of the things that really sort of attracted me to them was something that Jess touched on as well, is sort of getting that exposure to a lot of different industries and different clients. And it sort of really helps you, you know, especially if you want to go into industry one day, sort of understand like what different companies are like, and sort of getting a bit of an inside glimpse at, you know, how they work, how they run, the day-to-day sort of stuff. And that's sort of what brought me back as well to consulting, was I just sort of missed sort of having that exposure to, you know, a range of different clients and a range of different industries, and sort of, yeah, a bit of a change from the day-to-day that I was sort of getting at Telstra, which was getting a little bit stale at times. But yeah, that's pretty much why, and I guess how I found myself at Deloitte Digital.
Nice. Moving on to the next question. What are the skills you need to excel in your role? And we can start with Jess again.
I think in terms of the skills, there are two big skills that kind of come to my head. The first one being empathy. And the reason that I say empathy is not only do you need to be empathetic towards your team, and, you know, just remember that everyone that you work with are human. You know, they're going to have their up days, they're going to have their down days, and just be a nice person, and to really understand them, as well as understand your users. So who are you designing for? What are their pain points? You know, if you're able to identify those things and really relate to their experiences, then you can really create you know, a product that tries to help solve that real problem at the core. So that's the first skill that I would say, empathy. And the second skill I would say is communication. And I'm not just talking about verbal communication. You know, communication comes in all different kinds of sorts. So for me, my best form of communication is visual communication. That's how I best articulate my thoughts, not only because I'm a designer, but sometimes I struggle to just say things, and for me, it's better just to show you. Whereas with my engineers, they prefer to write things out. They may be a little bit more timid, which goes back to empathy. So for them, the best way that they communicate is they might send me a message, and that's absolutely fine. And when we do brainstorming sessions, the big thing that I love is when all our communication styles come together, because some people might want to talk, some people might want to write, some people might want to draw. But I think the great thing about that is, I think that's when, like, you know, great ideas really come to life, because you really allow people to express themselves in a way that they feel comfortable. So yeah, those are the two skills that I would say are the most important.
Love that. Thank you so much. Amir, how about you?
Great. Yeah, my answer is actually very similar to Jess. I think product managers and designers actually have there's a lot of overlap in the roles, especially around the part around empathy, of really understanding your customers, understanding that the problems that they face, and being able to solve those problems. But if I was to like try and pick some other skills that are kind of useful, it's probably just like your ability to kind of brainstorm is quite a useful ability, because when there's a particular problem, there's going to be at least over 100 solutions that you can kind of solve that problem. So, being able to brainstorm, and then also, filtering out that list and logically being able to kind of explain why a particular solution is better than the other. And then, I think a big part of product manager's role is to actually be the intersection between engineers, designers, and customers. So communication is also extremely important, because, as Jess said, everybody kind of has their own way of communicating. So being able to kind of earn the trust and respect, and be able to empathize with your team and communicate with them effectively is really important.
Yeah, that's really nice. Arlen, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think, sort of mirroring a lot of what's already been said. I think definitely, like, the soft skills are quite important. So just how you communicate, and sort of, especially in a virtual world like this, I think communication's a lot harder, but a lot more important, because you can so easily just sort of fade in the background. So I think being able to know how to communicate and how often to communicate is quite important. Especially, in situations like me, where I'm working with teams sort of across Australia, and I'm sure that these guys as well. Sort of, being able to do that effectively, because you can also have days where you've got, you're like back-to-back meetings, and understanding, maybe I don't need to have all these meetings. Maybe I can just sort of, crunch it down to sort of one quick snippet, so you're not overloading everyone. And in terms of technical skills, so, like by that I mean sort of, the design things, so like using the different technologies that we do. It's definitely helpful, but it's something that you can like really easily pick up. So if you never use, say like things like Sketch and Figma and stuff to design, it's definitely not the be all and end all. It's something that, you can definitely pick up on the job. It's more the person skills, and being able to talk to people, and even doing things like user research and customer interviews, just being able to sort of comfortably talk and communicate effectively is, I think, the key thing.
Yeah, that's really nice, and actually sort of goes into our next question of how technical is your role, and do you or should you have to code? I think this question is directed to Amir and Jess. Amir, do you want to go first? Oh, Jess, you can.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Oh. Yeah, I can
go for it.
Thanks. Yeah, do you have to code? No, you don't have to code, but it is useful to be able to, again, it kind of comes down to communicating with engineers and being able to empathize with them. So, when engineers are talking about backends, front ends, pipelines, CI/CD, infrastructure, like it's good to be able to show that you have an idea of what they're talking about, instead of having to ask them, oh, can you please explain what you mean? I mean, it's totally okay. Like they'll understand if you don't know what something means, and it's okay for you to ask. But if you do know what it means, I guess you kind of earn some brownie points, or the engineers might think you are kind of as skillful as you kind of present to be. So yeah, short answer is no, you don't have to code, but just being able to communicate effectively and empathize with the team is important.
Yeah, that's great. Jess.
Yeah, I would definitely have to echo a lot of those points that Amir mentioned. In terms of technical parts of my role, I would say it's like technical in the sense of the programs I use. So in terms of like Figma, that's the main program that I use. But I guess a really good skill also to know is, I guess it's more around getting engineers involved earlier on in the process. That way you can weigh up the effort of things that are going to be built. So yeah, you don't need to know how to code, but it's also good to have their input, so they know, what the roadmap is like. Is, the thing that you want to build actually feasible in the time frame that you have? And also just having that common language that Amir mentions. But I honestly think that's one of those things you pick up on the job. I remember when I was first starting out in product design, I had no idea when engineers were talking. I was just like, can you please simplify this for me? And luckily, if you work with some great engineers, they will actually sit you down and try and, talk to you like you are a little bit dumb. But that's absolutely okay, because it means that you completely understand what they're talking about. There's no shame in saying that you don't know. If anything, trust is created when you say you don't know something.
Yeah, I love that. Amir and Arlen, what does a typical work day or week look like to you?
Do you want me to go first? I can go first again. So I think my typical work day is kind of split into two kind of general buckets. It's kind of long-term thinking and short-term thinking. So long-term is probably more around like what are the OKRs we want to OKRs meaning objective and key results we want to kind of create this year, and figuring out what initiatives and what metrics for those kind of objectives, those company objectives. So really laying out the foundations for what's coming in the next year, 3 years, maybe even 5 years, if you want to go that far ahead. And then the other half of my role, probably not half, but maybe majority of it, is probably more around the short term, which, like I said earlier, is the intersection of design, engineers, customers, and I guess these company objectives. Making sure everyone has everything they need to work productively, establishing kind of success metrics for projects that you're working on. When you're writing out requirements, making sure you think through every single kind of edge case, figuring out the best solutions to problems, and figuring out, to what extent you need to validate a certain problem, because you have very limited resources. So whether how many customers should you interview before you've validated something, or maybe this feature is such an industry standard that it doesn't need any validation at all, and you should kind of do it. And kind of those details around implementation and requirements, and basically what the product or the new feature will look like. Getting all that together, making sure the team has everything they need to work effectively.
Nice. And Arlen?
Yeah, I guess it's a hard question to answer, because I guess every project I've been on has always been so different. But generally speaking, we usually sort of work in agile teams. So you'd start your day off with like a stand up, and if you're unlucky, you'd have multiple stand ups with multiple teams, which can get quite tedious. But then you'd sort of spread your day out. You mix it up between doing things like just actually having time to do design work. So just head down sort of in your design file and sort of working on something. There's walkthroughs with devs and sort of various other stakeholders in the business as well. This is a chance where I can give you sort of feedback or sort of input on what you want to change or do different. There's things like design jam sessions we do as well. So these are sort of like workshop type things where we sort of bring a whole bunch of people in, and we sort of have a bit of a jam to figure out a solution to a problem that we're having. And also another thing we often do is sort of walkthroughs with wider teams. So like these can be through things like showcases and stuff, where we have a nice pretty pack where we sort of collate all our different things we're working on. So not only the design stuff, but from a dev point of view and a business point of view as well. And we can get to play this actually back to a wider audience, and sort of then get feedback or compliments or whatever they want to sort of give back to us. But that's generally sort of how we work. Things like customer testing as well can sort of disrupt that a little bit, since a whole day would be more or less dedicated to that. So then you sort of leading up to that, you do things like you plan out how that's going to run. You create your assets and stuff, and you sort of then ensure you let your team know that you're going to be not available for an entire day while you talk to customers. But yeah.
Great, and I'll pass it on to Tiana.
Perfect. So our next question is directed at Arlen and Jess. And Jess, you can go first on this one, but just wanted to ask what you would look for in a product design or UX design candidate's portfolio.
Yeah, I think there are lots of things that we look forward to, but trying to summarize it, The things that I personally look out for, and I know a lot of my co-workers do too, is critical thinking in the process. So, the final outcome and the execution, yeah, that's important, but that's such a small part of the final piece. What I'm more interested is, how did you actually end up with that solution? What steps did you go towards that? And, were you being critical in that? Were you just accepting things for the way that they were? Or were you actually having a stand on things and thinking, how can this actually be improved? So I think really, showing that process, whether it's quick and messy, I don't care the way that you do that. Just show like what's in your brain. Once again, it goes back to that communication piece. And another part on that is also just showing that, you've taken consideration of your user, because I guess with the whole thing about user-centered design, it's really at the core of a lot of things that we do. So I think it's really important also to show that, everything that you've done is for the user and not for your own, personal gain. So those are the like key things. Otherwise, there are other small nuggets such as like business objectives and, like the user flow and whatnot. But I think like showing that process really gives me an understanding of your potential. If you're like a little bit unsure of the actual design execution, we can refine that later. We can work together to refine that. That doesn't impact, I think, your portfolio. It's more, that thinking.
Great, awesome. Thanks so much. And Arlen, over to you.
Yeah, mine's pretty much sort of on the similar line. It's sort of understanding the story that you're showing with I guess each example that you include in your portfolio. So yeah, we don't really sort of focus too much on like what the end result looks like. It's sort of understanding what you identified as the problem and all those different steps you sort of took in between to get there. But also be able to demonstrate not only that you did custom testing because you had to, but understanding why you had to do it, or why you had to do these individual sort of processes in between. And sort of also seeing how you then I guess display that say in an interview setting where you talk through say a particular like case study or something you've done, and just seeing how you're able to talk through what you did, how you did it, and why you did it, is the really key thing.
Fantastic, awesome. Thanks so much. Great advice from both of you. And this one is for Amir and for Arlen as well. What's the biggest challenge that you faced in your role? Amir, do you want to take it away on this one?
Sure. I don't know what the biggest is. There's a couple I can talk through. Probably just being in a startup, you do have very, very limited resources. So that means you have to actually like ruthlessly prioritize what to do. So really trying to find that balance between, an MVP, minimal viable product, or like the MLP, the minimum lovable product. It's like to what extent should you kind of optimize a solution given the limited resources that you have, and should you be working on something else instead? And when have you reached the satisfactory MVP or MLP? So probably that. But then also another challenge is probably aligning on cross domain projects. So if you're working on a particular project that requires several other teams' inputs, or they affect a lot of other teams, then working in your team, you can actually work quite quickly. But when you have to work with other teams, you have to be conscious of their timelines and things like that. So making sure that you're kind of aligned and all the timelines are aligned and everybody has the right information across these two different teams can be quite challenging. And for me personally, working from home has been a little bit challenging as well. When we weren't working from home, Airwallex, you kind of had the option to go in on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And that was really nice, just having to go in 2 days a week, or not having to, but having the option to go in 2 days a week where everybody come in and kind of hang out. But, right now Melbourne is in lockdown. So it's been tough kind of not seeing anyone's faces for me personally. So that's a kind of a big challenge as well.
Yeah, definitely a shared challenge that I feel like we've all felt. Yeah, thanks for that. And Arlen, go ahead.
Definitely. Yeah, I guess my challenges have sort of changed sort of throughout the years as I guess I get more deeper into UX. But I remember sort of starting out as a designer, and sort of, I'd always rely on, say, like a manager or a senior person to, overlook my designs and being there with me in meetings and sort of help guide me in that way. But I remember the first time sort of getting my own design piece of work, and I was controlling myself. I was in meetings by myself, and it was also at a time where you're sort of, with other stakeholders from like the client. And it was actually quite daunting just thinking that I have to answer these questions on the spot. I have to sort of, make judgment calls and things like that. And it's definitely something you pick up and it becomes natural, the more and more you do it. And to a point now where, yeah, it's, I can jump into a meeting and sort of walk through designs, and it's like, just talking through it's like normal. Whereas now I feel like the challenges, and it's sort of gotten worse, I think, in COVID, when we're all sort of working virtually, but the relationship building. So, when we're in person, especially going to a client side, you could, meet people organically, especially, and sort of build relationships that way. Whereas now it's a lot harder to do. You have to actually like put in a meeting to talk to someone. It's not just, sort of turning around and saying, hey, I'm Arlen, nice to meet you, I do X, Y, Z. So I think just being able to sort of, build those relationships sort of, virtually, which also then affects how you sort of, are in meetings and stuff. So for UX design, a lot of times we often have to sort of try to sell our idea, I guess, in a way to different people of different backgrounds. So whether it's, from business devs or anyone in between. And to do that through a virtual call can be quite hard because you're not getting sort of that, the body language, sort of a lot of people have their video off and stuff like that. And you're not being able to sort of talk to them in person. So it's definitely the communication side of things, I think, can be a bit of a challenge now as we just, all talk through Zoom, I guess, like we are at the moment.
Yeah, great. Thank you both. Yeah, very interesting insights into your roles there and your challenges. And another question we have for Jess and Arlen is, what do you like the most about the role that you're in? Jess, do you want to go first?
That's a tricky one. The thing that I like the most, I'm going to break it down into two things. The first thing that I like the most about my role, well, I guess this could be with any role, it doesn't have to specifically be my role, but the team that I work with. I work with 30 engineers, which is quite a lot, but the great thing that I love about my team is that they all have an opinion on design, even if they're not designers. And I love getting that diverse range of input, and the fact that, they're okay to speak their minds, and we do provide that safe space for them to speak their minds. And especially in lockdown, I think, having those conversations, also keeps the day a little bit interesting rather than it just being flat. So I really love my team and who I work with. The second one that is more related to my role, I guess, is with Canva. One of our biggest values or company missions is to make complex things simple. And that is a massive challenge, but what I love about it is it allows us to reimagine the design world and the design tools that we use. And that's really where I get to be really creative. I get to reimagine how to solve user problems. And that's what gives me the most energy in my work that I do, because it means that I get to explore things that have never even been considered in the design world. And I guess, Canva is all about like breaking that space, but being able to contribute to that, I think it's really rewarding, which is why it makes me feel like, it's the most enjoyable aspect as well.
Amazing, thank you. Over to you, Arlen.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is just the variety of work I get, at least at Deloitte. You're never working on something that's the same. So, you could be working on like 5 different websites, but they're all very different. I've, had the opportunity to work on not only websites, but like mobile apps and even things like a smart TV interface, which I thought was like the wildest thing to be a part of. And I think it's fun, but it's also a bit of a challenge sometimes, just so constantly contextually switching between companies and sort of different, like things that you're actually designing for. But I think the constant challenge is great, because then it sort of keeps pushing you to constantly learn and sort of keep growing. And sort of, yeah, keep trying new things and sort of discovering new things as well. But I think, yeah, some of Jess as well, I think the people, like the culture is such a big thing that I just couldn't imagine working in a place where I just didn't sort of fit in or like feel comfortable in the culture. And it not being just like, work and that's it, but actually having a group of people that you can, talk to and hang out with and do other things that aren't work related, which I think is really nice. And it sort of, especially times like now, it helps it not feel like you're just trapped at work at home, where you actually have people that you can talk to and just gossip or have some bands or whatever with as well. So it kind of, yeah, that sort of bring that vibe, I guess, virtually, and it's just maintaining it no matter where you are, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I love it. I think definitely maintaining those connections over Zoom is something that has made, the whole pandemic a bit easier for all of us. And the last question that we have before we move into the Q&A is for all of you. And we just want to ask, what is your key piece of advice that you would give to someone who's looking to break into product? So Jess, do you want to go first?
I'm happy if someone else wants to go first.
Sure, I can give you a moment. Arlen or Amir, do either of you want to volunteer yourselves?
Yeah, I can go. This
Awesome.
could be a little bit cliche, but one of the best things you could do, especially for product management, is probably to start your own startup or project. Or I mean, it doesn't have to be a startup. It could just be like a YouTube channel with a lot of subscribers, and anything that kind of where you kind of have to manage your own product in a way, because from that experience, it kind of just, it shows the kind of person you are. It's like you're willing to try new things and, try and manage, the end to end of a project that you have to kind of maintain. And throughout that process, you're going to have a lot of experiences and really good stories to tell for your interview. So generally in the interview, you might be asked a lot of kind of scenario questions, like tell me about a time where you did XYZ, and having those experiences where you can kind of tell some really kind of out of the box kind of stories or, challenges or problems that you solved will really help with that. An example I can think of that really helped for my interviews in particular is at TimeWeave, there was this #1 most requested feature. It was being requested like thousands of times, but we consciously decided not to build it because we decided it wasn't important, and it had a really good story around why it wasn't important. And that was like a really compelling story to explain to interviewers, because it's pretty out of the box. Most people would naturally think, oh, this is the #1 most requested feature, then you should build it. But just be that story of being able to explain why you chose not to, really kind of shows your critical thinking ability.
Great, thank you. Arlen, would you like to go next?
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, I guess maybe from a UX point of view, it's sort of being able to keep up with trends and sort of patterns and stuff, because, things constantly change, whether it's, web design or native mobile design or sort of anything else. So just being able to sort of, keep on top of that. And, that sort of involves doing your own, I guess, research sort of offline and sort of, like whether it's just reading like, stuff from Apple, Google, or anyone else as well, just so you're not sort of falling behind. And in terms of like technical skills, it's there's a lot of like free trials that you can sort of get. So for example, Figma is something we use a lot, and you can sort of get a free trial of that and just play around with it just to have that sort of basic understanding. It definitely depends sort of what, I guess, level you're coming into, but like for example, at a grad role here, we're not expecting you to be able to design everything off the bat, but if you have that sort of understanding of, oh, this is kind of how it works, it really sort of helps out. And even, sort of thinking about things like user research and stuff as well, just to understand, what different types of research that we can do, why we do it, and how we do it too. Just sort of really helps you, I guess, boost you up and sort of helps then you figure out where you sort of want to target yourself in the different areas of, I guess, product that you may want to go into.
Fantastic. And Jess, now go ahead.
Yeah, so just thinking about it, I think for me, the biggest piece of advice I can give is to be really critical about everything you use and be real about what frustrates you. So if you are using a website, an app, whatever digital product it may be, don't just accept it for the way that it is. Think, why is it frustrating? Is this thing frustrating? What would you do differently? And take that with you. So if you think you can do it better, then go ahead and do it. I'm thinking about my portfolio when I landed a job in product. 3 of those pieces were actually just self-initiated projects where I redesigned things because they were frankly frustrating the hell out of me. And I could really create a compelling case as to why a redesign is better. And what that does is it shows my critical thinking. It gives me an opportunity to show my design skills, and it also just shows that I have, the user at the center of things. So that was kind of how I broke into product. It worked for me, and I don't know if it will work for everyone, but I'm just talking from my own experience.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for your advice. I'm sure it's helped some of the people here. So I think we're going to hop on to questions now from participants. So I'm just going to get up our poll, which hopefully people have been sending in what they have too. And if you haven't got your question in, make sure you get it in now. All right. Cool. Looks like we have quite a few. All right, I'm just going to go through these top ones first. And if you haven't directed them to anyone, we'll direct them to everyone. So for this first one, any tips for navigating to a product path from an engineering or software engineering background? That's a really good question. Does anyone want to take the lead on answering that one?
I could start. I would actually start with actually researching this question because it's actually a really common question in the industry. So if you actually start Googling this question, you'll get a lot of probably more useful advice than I can personally say. But it would just be around, like, it's definitely a really good starting point. I would say going from engineering to product is quite quite kind of natural, as opposed to a lot of the other kind of transitions. So just make sure, I guess communication is kind of the really big piece there, because product managers are being expected to be able to kind of speak really well and speak really kind of inspirationally and have a lot of empathy. So that's probably one of the biggest things, but also just constantly questioning why you're building something will probably be a good starting point of shifting to the product path.
Awesome. I'm just conscious of time, so we might just move on to the next one. Amir, do you also want to take this one? How would people from non-technical or business backgrounds find a path to product management? Our portfolio is valued. I mean, I guess that's enough of a question for you to kind of delve into.
Yeah, no, definitely. So product management can come from anywhere. We like typically product managers, we it's kind of degree or background agnostic. So it doesn't matter where you come from or what you have. Definitely starting a startup or your own side project is a really big plus. I know a lot of people kind of look for that. And yeah, just kind of having those experiences that I talked about before, just really good stories about product decisions or interesting challenges that you've had to face would be useful.
Great. Jess, this one's for you. So when you talked about upskilling your UI UX skills, have you got any tips for someone who's new to that, and where should they start?
Yeah, so you don't have to pay for a course to get good at these stuff. There are so many free resources. The 2 that come to mind that I think are really great resources are IDEO's design kit. They're full of UX methodologies that you can use to understand how you think. The other one is Arlen. So they have a design course as well, but there's a lot of resources that they provide online as well. So they could be really helpful for you to build your UX skills and understand the mindset towards that. In terms of UI skills, I would recommend learning your foundations of what good design is. So it doesn't have to particularly even be in like digital design. I think just understanding what makes good typography, why color choices are good. Like you can tell a strong designer to a mediocre designer based on those, like that foundation. But if you're really, really struggling on that, I think mimicry, so actually copying other good designs and just replicating that will really start to get you into the pattern of questioning why things are laid out the way that they are. So I think copying is actually a really good way to start learning, because you really are more conscious about the decisions that were made in that UI design.
Funny that you mentioned
Fantastic.
that, Jess. That's exactly what I did for Timeweave when I was designing Timeweave. Is I copied other designs because I had no design skills at all. So,
Yeah.
and I needed to do that. So it's exactly what I did.
Well, that's why it worked out so well. Proof example.
Awesome. All right. Arlen, do you want to talk a little bit about if you needed to develop a portfolio, whether that was important for you breaking into product?
Yeah, I guess initially for my grad role, I didn't, thankfully, because I didn't really have anything to put in there anyway, or not that much at least. But sort of once I started looking around, that's when I started to frantically pull together all my stuff. So I think that's one thing to note is, as you start working on things, make sure you keep a note of it because you'll definitely quickly forget about it as the years go on. But yeah, I think it's definitely important pulling together a portfolio of different things that you've done. But also note that you're not going to be talking through everything in every interview. So understanding if they're asking you a specific question, knowing what's in your portfolio and what you can sort of refer back to sort of present that back to them, which is I guess more of a targeted way. So yes, it is important, especially as you go on in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Jess or Arlen? Oh, sorry, not Arlen. Amir, would you like to speak a little bit about that?
Obviously for product design, a portfolio is like essential. When you apply for a job, you will need to have a portfolio, and normally as part of the interviewing process, a portfolio review is actually conducted. When I was first starting out, because I didn't have client work, I included passion projects, which I think is absolutely fine. If anything, it distinguishes you from the other university students because you can tell when it's a university task because you get so many applications of the same brief. So if anything, a passion project is good to distinguish yourself.
Awesome. Amir, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, product managers, you don't really need to do a design portfolio, but generally I do like to come into interviews with a slide deck and just cover some really basic things. Like if there's something really exciting things that I want to talk about, like the storytelling examples that I mentioned earlier. But yeah, it really depends on what the interview is how the interview is structured, and each company kind of does it differently.
Yeah, great. All right, I think we're gonna have to wrap up the questions there. Just we're conscious of time. It's 1 o'clock now. But thank you so much everyone for coming. I really appreciate you speaking, all three of you, Jess, Arlen, and Amir. It's been so fantastic to hear from you and hear all of your insights and really useful advice, I think, that a lot of students are going to take away and be able to kind of build on that and build on their own experiences. And I hope that this has inspired some of you to maybe take some steps towards a career in product or help you out with what you need to do to get there yourself. So it's been fantastic. Thank you guys. And I just need to share one more thing with you before you go. Just wanted to plug some CISSA events that are coming up for us for the rest of the week. So here we go. So if you're looking for something to do in lockdown, if you're not really, doing much at home at the moment, we do have some events going on this week that we would love for you guys to come to. So we have our systems seminar series, which is on Wednesday. We had the first one last week, and if you want to hop on to the next one tomorrow, that would be amazing. You can catch up on the first one. It's been linked in the event, which I think Callista will share in the chat. And we also have a Leak Code Buddies program that's starting from Thursday. And so this introduction session will basically just be explaining the program and getting you guys started with technical interviews. So if you'd like to do that one, you'll need to sign up before Thursday. And lastly, we also have an introduction to Rust workshop, which will be led on Thursday as well. So lots of events for you to get involved with, and also keep on the lookout for more panels and workshops and things like that from the product community. And yeah, thanks so much for coming, everyone, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye.